right. Well, hello there, friends. It is so great to be back with you. It feels very deja vu because we were live with you last night for a special segment with the one and only That Queer Issa. And so I am just pumped to be back live here with another amazing, awesome community member, friend that I feel like we recently met in like the last year or so and have been getting to know each other a little bit better. And I'm just so excited for you to hear more about them. And so before I welcome them up onto the stage here, I should tell you my name is Sean Hayes. I use he, him, and his pronouns, and I'm a co-founder and the executive director here at Trans Northland. And drum roll, we are going to welcome Root to the stage. Thanks so much for being here, Root. If you'd love to introduce yourself to the good people.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me, Sean. Hi, everyone. I'm Root Holden. I use they, them pronouns, and I've been in the Duluth area for, I think, about 4.5 years now. Moved up just, maybe a year into the COVID pandemic. Oh my gosh, so many things. So I am queer and trans and have been in Minnesota for about 8.5 years now, originally from West Virginia. Hello, other Appalachian folks that are, have come to Minnesota for the survival of the trans and queer folks, which is, both a happy and sad laugh.
Right.
Yeah, and I'm a Master of Divinity student at United Theological Seminary down in the Twin Cities, which is a super queer friendly, trans friendly seminary where I'm working on a degree in spiritual direction. And I do a host of other things, including parenting and watching a puppy who is currently chewing on my bag behind me. So I might have to scoop him up and show him to you here. He's adorable and 7 months, and he's just like a Muppet with teeth right now. But yeah, and you'll see me in community as part of Pleasure and Belonging, which is a shop that is, I shouldn't say a shop, which is a space that's getting set up in Spirit Valley coming in 2026. So we were at Pride with a table, and we've been hosting other little events and things. Yeah, and I was reading tarot at the Halloween party with Trans Northland. So if you got your cards read, I hope things have gone well for you since.
That is right. And I did get my cards read, and it was good. It was a good reading. I feel like I'm in a weird kind of flop of like the end of the year, though, just like mentally and emotionally, probably physically too. And I'm ready though to move into this next year that we're starting off, and so before I forget, you said you're from West Virginia.
Mhm. I
That's
am of
so
Wheeling,
cool.
West Virginia. Yeah.
Oh
Yeah.
my
So I grew
gosh.
up like I have if I had literally grown up like 20 minutes south of where I did, I would have so much more of an accent. But if I talk to my sister, I get more twang. And a lot of my colleagues from school, a lot of us are remote students, because it is a UCC seminary, so United Church of Christ, which is one of the really progressive churches that's like yay queer, yay trans people, like of course Jesus loves everybody, blah blah. Um, which and so it does bring a lot of people from all over the country and honestly like all over the world to it. Uh, but I get so many people with twangy accents from the South, and so I come off a lot of my calls like with my full like oinging boinging accent, and it's hilarious.
I love that. And it's funny because small town, I was born in Hampton, Virginia, and
Oh,
have lived there three separate times in my life. It's sort of like that's the place, and Duluth, Minnesota, that I
hmm.
kind of are just special places. And so I love it. Virginians, look at us.
Like yeah,
I
I did have a
love
stopover
that.
in California for like a decade and a half, which I adore California as well. So whenever I got a chance, I got to take my partner out to the coast, like up in Humboldt County and Sonoma County, to like show them around all the places that I lived and loved and, are beautiful and really expensive to live now, but are still beautiful.
Beautiful. Everything's so expensive.
Oh my God, that is real. Mm,
Oh my gosh. Well, that's amazing. And I just want to say thanks again for taking the time to join
yeah.
us here today. And yeah, I'm just really pumped for folks to kind of learn more about you and your work and how you like fit into community and like I'm so curious like where our conversation is going to go. But
Mhm.
before we dive too deep in, we always like to start off with our gender joy segment. And so, for folks who don't know, this is sort of a time where we ask our guests, and I usually as well will share maybe a recent moment, maybe a anniversary, something that feels meaningful to us, you know, about our gender. Some folks might say gender euphoria, and gender joy. We love it, and we love bringing all the joy in, especially these days that can feel really dark and kind of scary. And so, yeah, Root, I'm curious if you have
Mhm.
anything that you can share in terms of some gender joy in your life.
Yeah, absolutely. So coming off of, I've been in grad school for what feels like a million years, but it's actually like 3 years. And something I realized coming out of this last semester is I never even think about my gender when I'm going to class. And I didn't realize how much that is a thing. Like if I'm like going to the hospital, going to the supermarket, if I'm in a, rural town, Minnesota or something like that. And it's like when I go to class, I just get to exist. And like if I might like notice like someone's funky sweatshirt or something amazing, but honestly, it not even having to be a thing is joyous in and of itself because it's like I get to just exist as I am. And it's such a beautiful moment every time that it's like I don't even have to question it. That doesn't even have to be a thought on my mind to just exist in my gender. So
Yes.
that's my joy. That
Yes.
space. Yeah.
Oh, and that feels so
Yeah.
joyful. And I think like I can imagine so freeing. Like
Hmm.
I feel like gender can be such a, I mean, we know it's like this construct, right, that humanity has sort of created, like all these rules about what gender is or can be, that can
Hmm.
feel so restrictive, right? And it's like,
Yeah.
why would we want to live that way? Just it's just one piece of who we are, right?
Hmm.
Um, and gosh, yeah, I know for me, I shared a little bit about this, I think the last time on the call where with Issa, who was our last guest star for our regularly
Oh
scheduled
my gosh.
combo.
So fantastic.
Um, yes, so fantastic. And yeah, I mean, this time of year in December is kind of, you know, full of anniversaries for me, including like when I came out as trans for the first time, which this year it'll be 11 years, which feels so wild to me.
Hmm.
And there's a couple of other things like I graduated from college and, you know, I enlisted and then also got out of the military in December, and so yeah, it's just an interesting month, and then add in the holidays and some of the challenges that you know we all can face with loved ones and that time. But it's just been a very reflective time for me, and I think I just feel so much gratitude um, for that like really scared, really clueless me 11 years ago who was just, I mean, so terrified to like really admit this to myself that I was trans and then to think about sharing that, sort of having to come out again in a different way to my family, and that has been challenging and yet yeah, it's like 11 years later I'm here, I'm queer, I'm like trying to live my best life, and I feel
Hmm.
better than I ever have, and a lot of that has to do with like finally figuring out this gender thing for me.
Hmm.
So yeah, that feels really cool. So
Yeah.
thank you for sharing that. It's so interesting because I mean we have different experiences, right? As non-binary folks
Hmm.
and as trans binary folks, and
Mm-hmm.
what gender can feel like or mean to us or
Mm-hmm.
not mean to us. You know, it's like, yeah, it's such a
Absolutely.
spectrum, I think, of like beautiful human complexity, and expansiveness.
Absolutely. Well, and I so appreciate that. It's like you took that energy of giving yourself space and taking it and making space for other people to also get to have that space for transformation, make that
Mm,
space for other people to explore their gender as well and make it safe for them. And I appreciate that you're making that space for people. Like that's, you know, you get to be the adult you're adult for so many people that don't get that at home or don't get that in other spaces. So like, yeah, I'm gonna take that in for a minute because that's amazing. And
yeah.
that's not a space that we necessarily got, and you're able to give that to other people, and you're
Mm,
actively giving that to other people.
yeah, man. Um, yeah, it's just bringing me back to a memory even further back than even before I knew I was trans, when I was coming out for the first time, kind of as a queer person. Um,
Mhm.
and I was having a lot of hard times with my family, who struggle and continue to struggle with my gender identity and queer identity and all of that. And we struggle
Mhm.
together in it. Um, but I just remember there was this point where I was so down and so sad and sort of distraught. And I just remember vividly I was driving, and like entering one of the tunnels, in Duluth, you know, if you're going up north 35 there. And
Mhm.
I just remember vividly I was crying. I was so upset. And I just thought, man, if I can help even one other person who has to go through like this thing that I'm going through, like maybe this is like preparing me, right, to be able to share and like help walk alongside someone, you know, who has to go through a similar journey. And I really have been blessed to be able to
Mhm.
do that. Yeah, so thank you for
Yeah,
that.
absolutely. And also, it's really interesting that you use literally the line walk alongside because in the spiritual care that I do, that is literally the phrase from one of the books, and it comes from a military chaplain. The phrase walk alongside because that's what spiritual care is really about. When it is in this space of being a chaplain, which was what my original training was towards. Oh, thank you. That led right into the first question. Good job. Good team. It is really about walking alongside someone. So yeah, so that work as an eco spiritual care provider, and I'll break down that what the wording in a second. Walking alongside someone in their process, you know, as a spiritual care provider is about, it's not about being like, oh, you come to, you know, this organization and you believe the things we believe and you do the things we do, and that's how you find God or find Jesus or find whatever it is that is going to be meaningful for you now, and that's, you know, what you go on with. Um, yeah, most of us have found that that didn't work for us, you know, and a lot of us had that kind of thrust upon us as children, you know, and you come into the religion of your parents, and it's not meant to be traumatizing, you know, it's not meant to be your parents trying to force something on you. It's them being like, oh, this is the thing that I was given, and so I'm going to give it to you because that's the thing that, you know, that I was given, and so I give it to you because that's what I was given, you know, and it's like saying it that way, it's like, well, that's also, you know, there's a lot of systemic somethings that come along with that, you know, including like abuse and things like that too. There's also a lot of joy that comes with that, like culture, you know, and things like that. But really, you know, spiritual care and companionship is about finding what works for you, what is of value to you, and what is true to you, what is intrinsically true to you. And so to walk alongside someone in spiritual care really means me coming to you and saying, like, hey, like I see that you're like at this point in a process. Um, what do you need right now? Um, and in my case, it's about spiritually, what do you need? What do you need to connect to something bigger than yourself? What do you need to feel unstuck? You know, you go to a therapist and they say, what do you need to feel unstuck when it comes to your nervous system? What do you need to feel unstuck when it comes to this trauma that you have, that you're holding, and it's impacting you in certain ways? And with spiritual work, it is more of that's not my scope of practice. I know some great therapists that I can direct people to if they come to me and they're like, "This is the thing I'm running into," and I'm like, I appreciate that that's what you're working on, and I have folks I can refer you to because that's not the thing that I'm trained to be able to work with you on. Um, and not to make it all sound sad and all of that, but walking alongside is like, okay, where do we find joy and where do we find connection and what's keeping us from getting there?
Mm.
Um, yeah, and so getting into that yeah, getting into that eco spiritual bit, like Duluth is just like, you know, I I have not yet found a person who is not almost nature first up here. Like there are people of many different religious traditions, like Abrahamic and otherwise. But so many people are nature first up here. Oh, how do you find joy? How do you find like value? Oh, like I go to the woods, I go skiing, I go fishing, I get out on the lake, and so it's really easy to be an eco spiritual provider up here because people are drawn up to Duluth or have grown up in nature, you know. Um, and so honestly, that's really where the eco bit comes from for me. Because for my own beliefs, it's like I'm an animist, so it's I think that everything is a person, everybody is a person. Like the trees out my window are people, the snow on the ground is a person, and so I think everything has its own intrinsic value and it's all interconnected. So if I go out there and, when I take my puppy out and pee on the snow, I'm like, I am so sorry. The same way that if my puppy goes out and pees on, the other dog, because it does happen, I'm like, oh, buddy, I'm so sorry. He's a puppy and he's figuring it out. Um, and so it's about my meaning making may look different than someone else's meaning making, but at that core level, it's like we are both made of dirt. We are both made of the same molecules, so we at least have that ground layer that we can meet each other on, and then we can figure things out from there. So that's my starting point with everyone. Like we're both made of molecules.
Yes. Oh my goodness. I've never like thought about it that way. Of course. Man, I love that. And I love how talked about like the walking alongside and how important that is. Because I think it's so easy for folks who sort of have their really intrinsic like beliefs that they hold, and if part of their belief system, right, is to try to share that with others and to try to either convert folks or get folks curious about their beliefs or their spiritual walks in life, however you want to say it, sometimes that can come off like, feeling like some pressure, right? Like that this is
Yeah.
the way that I think you should believe. And so I love that idea. And it's like, oh man, I think I need to hook up with you, Root, and do some of my own little bit of spiritual walking alongside of. Because I think for me, I was so turned off to spirituality for so long because I had been hurt by the church, the Christian church, and it's only been in maybe the last 5 or 6 years of my life where I've sort of started noticing, like, man, this spiritual piece of me is still part of me, even though I haven't looked at that or thought about it or really like tried to get to know that part of me in a long time. And so yeah, I love that we're having this conversation because it feels like just another step on my own journey of sort of becoming more curious about my spiritual self and what that sort of realm beliefs, what that might be for myself. And so,
Hmm.
yeah, I appreciate you sharing.
Yeah, and I will, I will also say there is not a single queer person, trans person, person of color, indigenous person that has not been harmed by the Christian church, or by Abrahamic faiths. Absolutely, that is there. Um, like the anger that is there, the injury that is there is absolutely there. And I mean, we know the abuses that have happened from people's stories. We know it um, from the evidence that has been, found, in the ground, and from the tales that have been, that we found, and from the survivors' stories. Um, and so I don't want to say anything that makes it sound like that is not part of this whole tale, this whole story. But I don't want settler colonialism or white supremacy to take away our ability to connect with something bigger than ourselves, because that is what it wants. It wants disconnection. It wants us to feel isolated, you know? And then, part of the part of wiping out culture is wiping out. It's an interesting and hard thing to talk about, because religion is also a weird colonial, like it's a weird white European construct, right? Religion was not like a separate thing from the rest of a culture. That's like a weird little box that white Europeans created when they were going around and cataloging other cultures. I didn't like there's things you don't learn until you're in seminary, and I'm like, what the heck is going on here? I didn't even thought about this, and like if you look at like Asian religions, it's like the idea of like if you go to Japan and you look at Taoism and Shintoism and then indigenous animist tradition, and Buddhism, like those were not all separate boxes before. Those literally were boxes created to meet the need of a literal piece of paper required by white Europeans, because they were like, well, we have this piece of paper, which was their basically, their equivalent of like, here's how our government works. And they went to Japan and they're like, well, we need to know how your government works and what your religions look like. And the Japanese were like, that's not how we break things down. And so, all of that was broken down and split out, even though what it was actually just this beautiful part of the culture. All of these things were interwoven. They're still interwoven. And in many households in the US too, it's like you walk in and you take your shoes off because that's what you do. And then maybe do this because you do this as part of one culture. You do this because it's part of like the religious culture, but then you do this other thing and you pray before your meal because it's part of this culture. But then you're doing this other thing in your kitchen because it came from this other culture. Um, and it really is this white supremacist piece that's like, well, but we need to label everything and know where it comes from and put it into these boxes so that we can understand it and we can take what serves us and we can take the rest and put it away. Sorry, the old dog and the young dog are like, we don't want to play right now. Little dog is like, I am interested in playing, and 9-year-old dog is like, I would like to sleep now.
Not now, buddy.
Not now, buddy. And so even being able to say religion is just like, I don't think I realized what a loaded term it is, but then it's what everywhere. It's like running our government and all of that, and we don't even know where this terminology came from or why we even made it up. So trying to that from spirituality, it's like, what even is spirituality? It's like, well, it's just my intrinsic desire to be connected with something beyond my own body.
Mm.
Even if I don't believe in like woo or energy or something outside of myself. Um, we know that we can't live on our own. That if we do studies, we find that newborns die if they don't get touched, by another human, because there was a horrible study by a European that found this thing because they did horrible studies on babies, in the whatever's 1800s or whatever, and so in all of these horrible ways, we found these things that's like, okay, well, we need connection. Okay, well, we need connection with a community of people so that we don't die. Okay, well, we need a community of connection with people so we can find happiness. We need a community of connection with something greater than ourselves so that we can feel empathy for something more than just the people right around us. Um, but I feel like there's something, like, I went more than that personally. You know what I mean? Like, for a long time I did go so I was very hurt by the Catholic Church. I grew up AFAB. I was I was in, seventh and eighth grade, the times when when altar girls were about to be introduced in the US. I was still not able to be an altar boy. Like, I wanted to be up there. I wanted to be able to ring the bells and, like, take the thing to the priest and, do the thing with the candles and all that. Because I loved ritual. I loved church. I loved mass. I loved getting up to read. I loved being able to sing in the choir and all of those pieces. Like, if Catholicism did nothing else for me, it taught me a deep love of ritual, you know? And I'm very grateful for that piece. But I was so pissed that I was not able to be an altar boy. Um, and I couldn't understand why the nun who was the principal in our church was not allowed to do all of the things in mass, because if, like, the priest was away, she would come over and she would do mass for, like, the weekly kids service, but there were two things she couldn't do, and I didn't get it because she was so good at everything she did. It's like, why can't she do these two things? And so the gender disparity, I didn't have a term for that then. I'm 10.
Right.
The gender disparity bothered me. I didn't get it, and so I didn't get confirmed. Um, and I started seeking something else outside of that. And that's where I started finding, books on witchcraft, and found a set of runes at my, like, one little crystal shop in Wheeling, West Virginia, which was literally called the Crystal Shop. And unfortunately,
I love it.
it's not there anymore, which is a deep sadness. There's something else there, but that still is a shop that sells uh, you know, flowy clothing, and, like, they have some, like, tarot and some, like, Hay House books and things, like, and, like, Llewellyn books and things like that, which is very sweet. Um, but it was, an opening to, like, oh, there's something more here, and it's also something you can do yourself. You can create this for yourself, and it was like, oh. And so, I spent a lot of years going down that road of, like, I can create my own ritual. I got the same books a lot of people get. I got my Silver Ravenwolf books and my Gerald Gardner introduction to, witchcraft kind of books that taught me how to create ritual and how to do these things. And it's incredibly empowering, and there is a huge movement on, witch talk and all of that, which I was going to throw in quotes, but I felt very boomer if I threw it in quotes. Um, because it is all of these, I'm going to say young people, but it's, a lot of people of a lot of ages that are like, no, actually, I'm going to do my own thing. And, for people of my generations, that be people in the, like, 90s and maybe early 2000s, that were like, no, actually, I'm not going to do this thing anymore. It's the craft generation, right? The 90s witch movies generation,
Yeah.
which I
Hmm.
think you're a part of as well.
Yep.
And we were like, no, I'm going to go do my own thing religiously, and do my own stuff out in the woods with my friends, and we're going to figure it out. And now we're seeing this whole generation of young people who are like, actually, no, I'm going to do, and it's like the witch talk and the influencers and stuff like that, but it's a whole generation of people that are like, oh, actually, no, I'm going to, maybe they're making a business out of it, but yeah, just like the witch in the woods, in the, let's say 1700s or whatever, it's pictured in our minds, was doing herbal stuff and doing things out in the woods, slightly away from society because it kept her safe. So these people out in their houses can go and make money and do what they need to do and have their alternative form of income through witch talk. I'm like, go for it. You know, honor the people that it came from, honor the recipes that you're getting from whoever, and refer back and acknowledge the people that you're taking this from or getting this from. And also, yes, create your own work in your own spirituality because you can. You're allowed.
Hmm. That is so interesting, Root. And I don't know that I've ever quite thought of it that way myself, even like to, and that's maybe just how ingrained my upbringing, my the religious upbringing that I had is. But that idea of like you can create your own rituals, you can you know make your spirituality, whatever that looks like, right? And folks
Hmm.
may even use different words than that, right? I mean, even that word I think can be charged for a lot of people.
Absolutely.
But yeah, just that, I mean, that feels like really freeing, I think, for me too. And so I'm curious, like, so as you're, connecting with folks who are reaching out to sort of, work with you, walk alongside
Hmm.
you, and sort of figure out where they land or what is it that, helps them feel connected or have hope for the future. Or, I'm sure there's lots of different reasons folks
Hmm.
come, um, and are maybe like seeking or searching, for some answers
Hmm.
for themselves. I'm curious, like, what does that look like? Like, if someone watching this right now is like, oh, okay, this is really interesting. I'm digging Root. Like, what, how does that begin? And like, what does it look like? And yeah, how
Sure.
can folks kind of connect with you as we're coming into the
Hmm.
new year?
Yeah. So right now they can find me through email, which is just rootholden@gmail.com because I'm a very creative person. And you can also find me at my website, rootholden.com. So super simple. Um, in terms of what I do, and I'll talk about the space that we're setting up in a little bit. In terms of what I do, a lot of it is one-on-one work, and it's going to be, you know, things that we don't haven't created spaces for. So I'm going through top surgery. I have like medical care, but like what else do I do? Because a lot of people are transplants, like that's that's a great pun. They're here, but they don't have, and maybe they have like medical support and maybe some familial support, but like they don't have queer community up here, or they don't have any sort of like care outside of like just physical care. Like we're missing that extra like okay like but I also just want someone to sit with me and like talk about the fact that like I went through this big transformation. Like how do I mark that? Like in Judaism they have like everyone knows about bar mitzvahs, and bar mitzvahs where it's like you become a man, you become a woman at age 13. But outside of some religious traditions, we don't really have that in like in and I'm going to say very specifically white American culture, because there's other American cultures that do have it, but there's not a lot of transitional ritual that happens in the U.S. And I'm also going to say indigenous cultures also have a lot of that white American culture does not have, because European culture did not have that. And so we have not inherited any of it. Um, and so that's a space that we're lacking in. And so that's a space where I'm looking to try to fill because I'm also lacking that. My mom is a Polish immigrant. She came over here when she was 2 after World War II, and the camps were um, freed. And then my dad grew up in Appalachia, and so he doesn't have really any connection to, didn't have any connection, historically to his, anything beyond what was available in Appalachia, which was a lot of other white people who had only had been there for a few decades. And so we don't have that grounding, you know. It's like we were the people that I am descended from were killing off the indigenous people that were on that land. And so there was no traditions there, nothing that they were like learning from people who lived there, nothing that they brought with them around transition. We know about marriages and funerals and baptisms. There are so many life transitions outside of that, not even just for trans people. When we take on a new name, when we, have a major surgery, even if it's not related to gender, even if it's, a tumor removal, if it's anything, honestly. Um, so that's the kind of stuff that I want to work with people on. We're going through these huge things by ourselves, and we might get psychological care around it, but we're not getting anything else. And so those are the places that I want to help people. The other thing is in death care, and particularly in Duluth, we do have some hospice care, and there's a ton of death care, a ton of death workers down in the cities, but there's really nothing in Duluth. And honestly, if there are any end of life doulas and death care workers in Duluth, please reach out to me because I would like to start forming a like collective so that we can start getting some death care workers together. Um, but and particularly folks that work with queer and trans folks, I've not seen anything. And so that's the kind of work that I'm looking at. It's, anything from looking for, you know, people to like work with you on living wills and working through the process of like, you know, making sure that people are using the right name and pronouns for you at the hospital, having a human there with you to make sure that, um, your wishes are being fulfilled, having the right music as you're, passing, that kind of stuff. Like there's so many things that happen in death care that are like so well defined that we could apply to other life transitions, which sounds silly, but it's kind of like wedding planning. It's like everybody knows, like not everybody, many people can be like, oh, these are the things I would want for my birthday party, or these are the things that I would want for my wedding. Every transition could have that level of what do you want to hear? What do you want to see? What do you want to taste? What do you want to feel? Level of somatic integration. I just totally got chills up my back because I'm like, oh, somatic integration. That's an area I'm starting to get trained in. It's an area that my partner is trained in. And I've found so much healing myself through. Um, and that's a piece of what ritual is about. That's something that I've been unpacking over the last 6 months through actually a class that really breaks down what ritual is about and what it's meant to be. And it is about that somatic piece of like, how are we taking whatever is happening and how are we, you know, how are you putting it in your body? This thing that is happening, how is it getting put in? How are you taking it in? And especially when we do have like things that are related to a queer life, to a trans life, those aren't particularly well integrated because those rituals that we had from childhood or religious related stuff, we'll say things that were typically held by religion, those life events are no longer held for us because some of us have so much trauma from religion that we're like, nope, that door is closed. But then we have this whole life that we don't know how to hold those pieces in because we've lost like this whole tool set. So yeah, so it's about trying to figure out how to reintegrate those tools. So what I do is sit with people and be like, okay, well, like what tool set would work for this? So that was a really long and kind of abstract answer to your question, and I apologize because I realized I kind of went on a little journey with I the really short answer is like I'm an interfaith celebrant, so I do support people through planning like weddings and funerals and if you want your baby to be baptized in a very pagan way or have naming ceremonies and things like that, it's like all of those sort of life transition kind of things. But also, if somebody is just feels like they're struggling or struggling to figure out, like, okay, like, Christianity failed me, or whatever belief system that I grew up with is not working for me, but I know I want something. We can sit down together and have a discernment process where we go, okay, like, what do you feel? What do you feel in your body? What do you feel works for you in terms of your values? And we can kind of figure out, like, okay, like, what daily ritual would feel good for you? In the morning, would it feel good to just look out the window and have a few moments to breathe, and that's enough to feel connected with something bigger than yourself? Because for some people, that's it. That's enough. You know, do you need a bigger moving practice? Great. Let's figure out what that moving practice looks like. Is it a 5 minute walk in the woods? Is it 10 minutes of yoga? And so it's just sitting with people really to figure out one on one what works. Bigger stuff, though, we are looking to start hosting like seasonal celebrations, and that's going to look more like the sort of pagan wheel of the year. So honestly, it's like every 6-ish weeks, I think, is what it looks like. But essentially, the solstices and then the equinoxes. We just want to host, and when I say we, I mean me and my partner Alex. So we're looking to open Pleasure and Belonging, which is going to open, we hope, in May of 2026. We have a physical space in Spirit Valley, which we're super excited about. It's down by Flora North and uh, oh my gosh, I just blanked out, Bailey's Builds and like the West Duluth public libraries. It's like right in that little block area. And we're working with Kirsa from Brick and Mortar right now to like figure out architecture and doing all of the things to take a dentist's office into sort of a therapeutic office and classroom space and all of that. So we're super excited. Um, but yeah, once it's a physical space, it's going to have a classroom area. It's going to have like a treatment room for body work, and it's also going to have offices for my work in spiritual direction and Alex's work in family therapy. But then we're also going to be able to host like seasonal ritual and classes. And I'm excited to be able to do spiritual direction and spiritual companionship in group as well as one on one. So group work is going to look more like things like, honestly, it'll be classes on pagan practices, on, what is the solstice? What does this mean? Working with the elements, working with different like ritual tools and things like that. And then there's actually other spiritual companionship slash spiritual director. Spiritual directors is like the existing term that comes from Christianity for what my degree is in. Spiritual companionship is the sort of preferred term now for what we actually do. And spiritual director is more of like an organizational term. So like if I worked for a church, I would be the spiritual director. But if I'm doing more one work, spiritual companion is like the preferred term for what we actually do. Because director just like I feel like a cruise director or something, like here's the entertainment for the day, which I just find hilarious. Because I have no interest in directing anything.
Right.
um,
Oh
Yeah,
man.
but I'm excited because there's other spiritual directors up in the area that are also non-Abrahamic, and so I'm excited to also rope them in to come and do classes and things like that too. Because honestly, it's just so nice to have folks that are, you know, not not roped into particular traditions or roped into particular faiths or organizations. Not that there's anything particularly wrong with those, but giving people an option outside of those sort of more traditional pathways to be more exploratory and say, like, oh, well, I don't know what I believe, but let's look around. Let's examine the space.
Oh my
Yeah.
goodness.
Yeah.
That all sounds so incredible. And I know I had heard about the building that y'all had purchased. Is that right?
Yeah.
And just like how that is all coming together. And I know I am super excited to come and like check the space out once it's ready and all of that. And And
Hmm.
we'll definitely want to like promote it and get all the word out to all the folks, you know, who happen to follow Trans Northland. We want you to connect with Root and Alex and just all of the amazing things y'all are already doing, and like these amazing ideas for the coming year with the classes and the different ways folks can explore and maybe connect with new folks who are on similar journeys, right? And I mean,
Absolutely.
I don't know, I just think that's what it's all about, is those connections, you know, finding folks who
Hmm.
can kind of understand and who are like you, then who can also walk alongside in a way that's really caring and compassionate. um and so I just want to like have everyone go and check y'all out. Are there ways that folks can support now, or are there things coming up that you might want to share about, that folks can just be on the lookout for?
Hmm. So I'm already offering services. So everything I'm doing right now is virtually, though I can do meeting up like in coffee shops and things like that. So the way I do my services is I will meet someone for like 30 minutes just to like chat, see where you're at and what you're looking for. Because since I'm offering anything from like I will come officiate your wedding to like, you know, long-term spiritual direction, which is like we meet once a month, we kind of talk through things in a more like, you know, we meet in an office space, so it's a little bit more confidential. I'll meet for half an hour in a coffee shop. Honestly, I was like, what sweatshirt I realize I'm like every sweatshirt I have is repping some local business now. So I'm like, what am I repping right now? So we can meet at Ursa Minor and have pizza and just have a quick check-in. But yeah, I often meet at Dovetail for a half hour, just kind of check in and see what people are looking for. But then once the space is open, yeah, but for now, also, I meet people online. Yeah, I'm actually going to meet someone later today and just just kind of get a quick check-in and see what they need. Um, and yeah, I do online services too. So just via Zoom, we do, online work. And then I'm trying to think, we don't have any pop-ups coming up anytime soon, but I will say that Alex is offering an upcoming event at Foxes and Fireflies. So I'm just local, just gonna keep repping local services and support. So Foxes and
Yes.
Fireflies in Superior, our daughter, who's 22 and amazing, started going to their book bedazzling events, and we started going with because it's amazing and it's such a sweet and inclusive space. Um, and so they started talking to my partner Alex, who's an author, and Alex is going to be running an event there because they're in an old post office in Superior and they have this amazing like meeting boardroom that they use for events. So Alex
Wow.
is offering, yeah, it's super cool and they're sweet people. Alex is offering something called Weaving Webs of Care, an interactive book experience. So Alex wrote a book called Hell Yeah Self Care. I'm like, is it on my shelf right by me? It's not. And Hell Yeah Self Care is by Alex and Meg John Barker, and it's this really great workbook that takes you through lots of work, and it's not just about really self-care, it's really about how to be part of community and do community care as well. So the title is not quite on par with the level of work you're really doing in it, but they
Mhm.
are doing an interactive book experience on January 10th from 1 to 3:30, and all these details are going to be posted in the Trans Northland events as well, so you don't have to remember all this.
Yeah,
And here's the
exactly.
description, which I loved. Many of us are struggling right now as we juggle survival under late stage capitalism, taking care of ourselves, our loved ones, and showing up in and for our communities in the middle of this poly crisis. Join Dr. Alex Antoffi for an interactive book experience based on one of their books, Hell Yeah Self Care, a trauma informed workbook to create your own personal map to balancing self and community care in 2026. So it's going to be really fun. They're also bringing like coloring sheets and things like that. I love Alex's events. I'm always there doing support, but I'm also like, I just love doing events with them because they are super interactive and fun. And it's a great space. There's a bathroom, there's an accessible entrance, there's a ramp, there's buttons for easy access to come into the store. And I'm just thinking you go straight through the store, and there's going to be another door with an accessible button to get into the board meeting area where they have their events. Yeah, so it's all wheelchair accessible and easy to get to. And there's a bathroom available.
Wow.
I think it's
And
also, I think it,
that's
yeah,
amazing, the accessibility piece, because I mean there's so many like older buildings, I mean in Superior and in Duluth, and it's just, you know, a lot of these spaces are not accessible for as many folks.
absolutely.
And so I love that you shared those details. I need to reach
Yeah,
out and be like, we should host an event over there, collab.
absolutely. That's with pleasure and belonging. That's actually one of the biggest pieces for us is making sure because it already has an accessible entrance on the side, but it didn't have an accessible bathroom or classroom area. And so that was actually the main thing we brought in the architect to work on was to look at, okay, like how do we get a truly accessible bathroom and like classroom area? So Tirsa put together really great designs for us and we, figured it out for us because we're like, we don't know how to do this. This is not our scope of like work at all. And she figured it out and it's gonna be, we're so excited. It looks so great. But yeah, that's the joy of like it being an old post office, the fact that it's, access was included from like the 1970s on. So
Oof. Oh my
yeah, but
gosh.
yeah,
Yeah.
so the event's really exciting and we'll be posting about it as well. But yeah, I think 2020 through every year has been hard. Like systemic oppression has made every year hard since the existence of people. That
Yes.
has
Yep.
never stopped. But yeah, 2025 has just been, you know, it's been a year for everybody.
Yes, it
And
has.
so, yeah, I love that you start off with gender joy, and I hope that folks are figuring out a way to find a way to wind down 2025 in a way that is caring for yourself and for the people around you immediately without overextending yourself. Like so I know so many of us are overextenders that do that. I'm sorry that I didn't mean for that to be so pointed. I'm
I'm
just
kidding.
gonna I'm just gonna sit with that one for a minute.
I love it.
I
Yep.
just yeah. And I know that it's hard under like in Alex's description under late stage capitalism, it's like we are all just trying to survive. And however many layers of systemic oppression people are under makes it incredibly difficult to find a spot of joy or quiet or honestly whatever you need um, to find joy and quiet and silence or whatever you need. So
Yes.
a couple of ways to
Yeah.
take care of yourself. Yeah, do what you
Yes.
can to find a moment of joy in whatever gives you joy. Um, and if it's a somatic, find something somatic. Um, for me, honestly, I've literally been playing with a fidget this entire time. It's actually for holding books because it makes it easier for me to hold paperback or hardback books without my hand hurting because of
Wow.
arthritis. So find something, even if it's just one thing in your day, find one thing that you can, touch, taste, uh, feel, smell that brings you some level of comfort. And if you can even just take 1 second to just breathe it in, touch it, taste it, feel it, and just let yourself have that moment of comfort, that would be one way.
Yes.
Yeah.
I love that so much. And I think it's important to say that, I talk a lot about joy, Trans Northland talks a lot about joy, right? Because we do see it as being something so, so critical to like literally staying alive, and trying to figure out what thriving can look like. Like, I
Mhm.
think there's so many of us trying to dream about that, and I don't think it's like just this easy thing, and it's certainly not for me on every day to like find something to be joyful about. So I want to just like name that, and when I can, in those moments where it feels hard and I can sort of like lean into it and push myself, there's always something that comes to me, whether it was something that happened last week that I had forgotten about and just never took a moment to like feel the joy. Or maybe it's just something I'm looking forward to. Like maybe it's, I'm so ready for this day to be done. Tomorrow's going to be a better day. I mean,
Hmm.
whatever it is, I think, like you said, it's like those moments that really do keep sustaining us through um, some really tough times. Like you said, this year has been one of the hardest that I can remember in a long time, long, long time. And so, you know, what are the things that brought you joy over the year? I think it's easy to look back and be like, that was a shit show of a year. And for sure it was. But also, I know for
Hmm.
me, there were a lot of really beautiful moments too. There were a lot of connective, joyful, fun, silly moments too, So
Hmm.
I need to, I think about that for myself as I'm, coming up to midnight tonight and kind of doing some New Year's reflections myself in the coming days, just thinking about what were those good things that I want to bring
Hmm.
more of into this next year, and just create more of that for myself and the folks around me.
Absolutely. Yeah. And for folks that, if you want a very simple practice, one is just like you said, find one thing you had gratitude for in the previous year. If you want to be a little spiteful, find one thing that you're like, I am so glad that is over. And, you can like write it down, toss it in a fire. You can write it down, tear it up, and think of one thing for the next year. Write it down as an intention for the next year, state it as, in this next year, blah, blah, blah. Or, in this next year, I will have more joy, or I have more joy, or whatever you want it to be. And yeah, just put it somewhere that you'll see it. Like my my puppy has now torn mine up, but mine, the one that I set for the next year is to slow down, to grow deep root. And
Mm.
honestly, that came from meditation. Chani Nichols is an astrologer that puts out like weekly and monthly meditations and like little rituals and things through her app, which is fantastic. Embrace technology. It is not woo. It is just using the technology that is available at the time, just like we've done, you know, for decades and centuries. Um, but yeah, it doesn't have to be anything complex. Just something to our brains like routine and just something to come back to. So even if it's just the word joy, just a touch point every day to look back to. Yeah.
Yes. Yes. I love that. Oh my gosh. Well, I don't know how it happens. I told you at the beginning too, before we went live, I'm like, these things fly by. It's like an hour is never enough, but I'm sure we've sort of only scratched the surface, right, of who you are, Root, and all of the things I think that you share and bring to our community here in the Northland. And so I just want to say thank you again for taking the time and coming on and chatting with me and just sharing more about yourself with our folks who tune in. It's been a lot of fun.
Yeah. Thank you so much for having me, Sean. Thank you for the work that you're doing out there in the world.
Yeah, there's a lot of us. I think that is one of the big things that keeps giving me hope. Every time I have a new guest star on this show or learn of some new group that's popped up, it's like there's so many of us out here organizing and trying to build this inclusive, safe community that we want to see here in the Northland. So thank you for your part in that, Root. And yeah, thanks to all of y'all who've tuned in with us live. Maybe you're watching after the fact, or you might be listening on wherever you get your podcasts at, because we are on podcasts now because we fancy. Um, so thank you so much to all of y'all who have joined us. Just a reminder, if you're looking for some last minute plans for the new year, you can definitely check out our events calendar. I know that's been popped up a couple times during our conversation. There's a couple things happening. And whatever you decide to do, we just hope you have a really safe, joyful, connected new year. And as we move into 2026, we're pumped. Trans Northland's going to be doing a lot more stuff, offering a lot more events. Our support group's going to be still running. Our mutual aid program is really taking off as well. And so, you know, as we're coming to the end of a year, as this organization and the work that we've done, we're just super duper grateful that you're a part of our community and we get to do this thing called life together. So thanks again for joining. You can subscribe to our YouTube channel, follow us on Facebook and Instagram. We've got an email list too. Find us, you can connect with us. And yeah, until next time, we'll see you in 2026. Take care, all of y'all.